studio work that they did.
Okay, so how did you lock it up with what you did?
Well, I just sent them at Troontrack. I just sent them my drum files.
I see.
And they created the MIDI file, which is
using drum tracker.
Right.
Using the their program drum trackers.
Right,
so,
I see.
you know, that's what I got back from them.
I see.
And then you can go in and modify it too if you want.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Dynamics and all that sort of stuff. And so, I mean, you could use Drum Tracker and create MIDI files from real drums, which is, you know, so you can use your drums to sound replace existing drums. So there's all that as well that you can do.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's crazy what all you can do.
We recorded these drums at Sound Kitchen Studios, not far from my studio. It's an incredible room, a lot of wood, it's large and live, yet it's not out of control. Some rooms are just so loud and reverberant that they infringe on the music. It's like the sound of the room kind of fills up the sound too much and you can't hear through it.
When Troontrack asked me who I'd like to use, there was no question. It had to be Chuck because he's just been around the block as much as me, not just in country but in pop and rock and roll as well. World music, I would call it. So he chose a studio. It's one that he liked, and I trusted him to be able to work where he wanted to work, to get the right sounds, to get the best sounds we could for that project.
Sound Kitchen is one of these rooms where it's big enough that you could use it as a rock session, or it's tight enough, you can make it tight enough to where it's and tame enough to where it works in a country record. It's one of the great things about Sound Kitchen.
There's ways to get lots of room ambience in that room, and he's recorded enough out there to where he knew where to put the drums, and so I just left that up to him. He was the boss as far as where we would go, and I'm really happy with what we got.
Yeah. So, but I'm just like knocked out about how cool it sounds like with real, like if I turn on your drum.
Sample and used to try to trigger with whatever.
Yeah, but it always sounded so phony, phony, because it was like, you know, it's like the same drum hitting over and over again, and the dynamics weren't there, and the subtleties.
Well, that's one thing
that
Troontrack has got is all that the velocity and the way that the engine works. You know, it's awesome,
and it just sounds really good.
It does sound good. Matter of fact, I like mine better.
Well, I know. Sound better.
See?
Yeah, bro.
See what we can do?
Or ours sound better.
That's right.
In thinking about how I would approach recording drums for a sample library as opposed to going into recording an album, I figured it had to have a lot of flexibility. We had to be able to cover all genres of music. So we mic'd the room as though it was a rock record, but had close mics as though it was going to be a country record, where it was tight and tame, but yet you could expand the sound by using more and more of the live room mics. The great thing about Superior Drummer is that all that is adjustable in the mixer. You can go in and go to the mix view and turn up the room mics if you like. And we have several different options of room mics to expand on it in different ways. A real compressed up middle drum mic, so it just really gives it that kind of Tom Petty rock sound, or the big live open Led Zeppelin kind of drum sound. And yet you can pull those down, and the close mics are sufficient to giving you a nice tight clean sound like you might find typically in a country record.
To get the sounds for these drums, I had to hit them at different velocities from the quietest. I mean, literally letting the stick just fall off my hand. And then I had to let the drum die down completely in the room, which the room is big, so you got to let it die down so that all the mics can pick up that one sound. Then you bring up the velocity, and you keep bringing it up, letting the sound die down each time until you get to the loudest hit. And then you have to start all over with the toms. And then you have to do each cymbal the same way. And then you have to do it with brushes. So we incorporated all brushes and sticks, and also I play with my fingers, my hands a lot. So we did some finger sounds as well. Each hit at each velocity, we had to wait for the sound to die out into the room to make it a clean hit. So it took about 3 days to do all this.
Really cool.
So you would play with this for a day?
Yeah, I just messing with the creating just some different, because there's so much you can do with, because you've just got EzDrummer, right?
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
So the Superior Drummer was all the cool stuff that it can do, man. It's like, and since I've not worked with EzDrummer, I don't know what's really different. So, but presumably you have all this, right? You have where you can play each drum,
Right.
and you've got a mix. Do you have a mixer?
Yeah, there's
as
an
well?
onboard mixer, right?
Do you have like all the plug-in effects possible?
No.
So each
Not unless you send it to separate tracks, and then you can do whatever hardware you're using or software you're using.
in your DAW.
Yeah,
right.
then you can.
Yeah, you could separate this
that.
out and do that, but this actually has built-in plug-in effects.
That's
so
great.
you've got an EQ, like a 5-band EQ. You've got filters. You've got a gate. You've got a compressor, and you've got a transient designer, so you can actually adjust the It's kind of like a compressor, just only really crazy. Like you can take out the attack and have only sustain, or have the attack and no sustain.
Right. Right.
So you got all that stuff. So I mean, you can turn on the EQ, and then and it's really good EQ too. It's really amazing. But the compressor's been just killing me.
Show me that. It's all about the compression.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we'll just go with this bass drum and then do you have where you can adjust the leakage?
No.
So
there's a room fader with the EzDrummer where you can bring up the room less or more.
Well, here you can select each thing individually. Like if I didn't like the snare drum bleed, you can pull that out.
Right.
And I mean, this is just the bass drum we're hearing, so that's like the leakage into the bass drum.
Right.
Or you can select it all and just get rid of all the.
I recently did an interview with a guy doing an article for an English magazine, and he's asking me about the Nashville sound. How do you get that Nashville sound? And I said, now Nashville's like, it's everything. It is the pop music of today. I mean, we're making rock records here, we're making jazz records here, and country music kind of covers the whole gambit from like, a soft little swing thing to a really pounding heavy metal thing. And to be able to make a record in Nashville, you have to be able to cover all those areas.
Nashville to me is a musical melting pot of all styles, and people don't really get that until they come here. But creatively, I believe it's kind of created its own little vortex of creativity. People are drawn here. Writers are drawn here. Musicians are drawn here. Just all types of music comes out of here.